Chariots, Wheels, and Fire, a Dvar Torah for Parashat Beshalach. Yeciat Mitzrayim is a fundamental event in Israeli history, therefore it's not very surprising to find hundreds or even thousands of works of art that tried to preserve this moment. The problem is that in art, one must choose an exact moment one wants to preserve, and most artists chose to focus on peak moments, such as Moshe splitting the sea, the Egyptians while chasing in their chariots, the Egyptians drowning while the Israelites crossed on dry land. A moment I didn't get to see preserved in art is the verse ויסר את אופן מרכבותיו וינהגהו בכבדות. But it's hard to blame the various artists. To try and understand what is happening in this verse, we have to answer too many questions. Who removed what from who? How was it done? Who led whom? Where were they led? What was heavy? And to complete this list, when? Not when anything specific, only a general when. I don't know how many of these questions we'll answer this week, and we may find a few others on the way, so let's get started. Rashi is very dramatic. The previous verse said that God overlooked the Egyptian camp with a pillar of fire and cloud and stunned the Egyptians. Therefore, Rashi explains that the fire pillar burned the chariots' wheels, Ophan, and the Egyptian chariots were dragged without them. This led to a not very pleasant journey, to say the least, and this was the Hanhaga that Hashem led them, measure for measure, midah keneged midah. They weighed down their hearts, hechbidu et libam, and He led them heavily, veinhagהו בכבדות. To answer our questions then, Hashem removed the wheels from the chariots, using the pillar of fire. He led the Egyptians, where to is irrelevant, and a measure for measure. Rashbam reduces a direct miraculous revelation and answers as follows. When the Egyptians saw that they were stunned by what was happening with the pillar of fire and cloud, they tried to turn the wheels of their chariots, the Ophanim, and escape, but couldn't because they bumped into each other. If so, the Egyptians tried to lehasir, turn around the Ophan, the wheels, steering wheel or something, themselves, maybe manually, to return to Egypt, but collided with each other. Ibn Ezra explains similarly to Rashbam, but offers two different interpretations for the word vayasar. First, the Egyptians unharnessed the horses so that they could escape, maybe on their backs, without carrying the heavy chariots. And second, from the word sorer, which means to move from the right path. Those in front wanted to turn the chariots around. What probably happened is that the charioteers in front saw the chaos and tried to turn their chariots, but crashed into the chariots behind them. Or a different interpretation, a little bit less likely but much cooler, is that the horses themselves were the ones leading and were trying to turn around. Anyways, whatever it is that happened, the answers that changed are that Vayaser becomes untying or disobedience, and for the second half of the second interpretations, instead of people leading, it's horses becoming the leaders. They are the manhigim. Rabbi Yosef Bechor Shol says that topography was against the Egyptians because as soon as the sea receded, the chariots began to tumble towards the abyss in the sea. Therefore, they tried to take the Ophanim, maybe wheels, off the chariots so that they wouldn't be dragged down, but the chariots were too heavy and drove them relentlessly. Rabbi Avraham ben Arambam says that the Ophan is a small screw that holds the chariots to the horse. The Panach Raza explains that only one wheel was removed, that's why it's Ophan for each chariot. According to Rabbeinu Bechai, the Ophan is the Egyptian guardian angel. Abarbanel claims that the chariot wheels were sunk in clay at the bottom of the sea, and the horses refused to continue because of the chaos. And according to the Netziv, the Egyptians saw that they could only continue to pursue heavily. What all these commentators have in common is that the verse is difficult to explain. This is why, with your permission, I will not offer interpretation of my own, rather a source for comparison. I've seen those who suggested comparing Sisra's war with the splitting of the Red Sea due to many similar words in both stories, Vayasar, Merkava, Anusa, Mipnei. But I think it's worth looking at the verses that talk about building Beit HaMikdash at the time of Shlomo HaMelech, when the words Ofan and Panim appear over and over, and the chapter includes the phrase Ofan HaMerkava, Ofan Mרכבותיו. Or you could also compare it with chapters Aleph, Gimel, and Yud in Sefer Yechezkel, where these same words also play a very important role. What I think is most interesting in the chapters in Yechezkel is the missing word, because we all know those chapters as Ma'aseh Merkava, even though the word Merkava doesn't appear there once. As I said, I won't try to explain, but I will point out that when the sages said Ra'ata shifcha al hayam ma shelo ra'a Yechezkel ben Buzi, perhaps they were referring to the art that we couldn't find either. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe or pass it on to a friend. I'd also like to hear what you have to say about the new pictures that I have here. Please leave a comment below. I am Dovi Holtz, one who loves Tanakh.